Fellas, I love Battle Network 5. It was my first Battle Network game. Heck, my first ever Mega Man game. Playing it felt more euphoric than getting a high-valued Pokemon card. My God. Whoa. Wait a minute. I don't even play TCG. I loved a lot of things about this game, the combat system being one of those things. I talked about it in my previous video, which, I'd appreciate if y'all check it out if you haven't already. But one of the things I didn't cover were the dark chips, because I thought they were interesting enough to cover them in its own separate video, and quite frankly, I've been wanting to talk about them for a minute. I remember obtaining one of those chips, and my first thought was, hey, they look cool, because it looked different than the other chips I've seen. When I saw the damage number of that dark sword, I later thought, oh my god, it looks cool, and it's strong? I gotta use this chip. I gotta use it. Only to then find out the consequences of using them, and then immediately reloading my save. And so they kind of stuck with me ever since. It was definitely one of my more memorable experiences when playing through Battle Network 5. So for this video, I'll be mostly talking about their involvement, or lack thereof, in the story. Not just in Battle Network 5, but Battle Network 4. We'll keep it focused on the games, but I'll briefly bring up some elements from the anime to expand on certain things. I'll break down and analyze how they work and how well they fit thematically in combat. To explain what dark chips are, we need to establish some context. However, for us to talk about it, we'll have to commit an action so vile, so sickening, so terrifying that it makes the most unhinged criminals shake in their boots. That's right. We'll have to play Battle Network 4. Yeah, I know. This is gonna be a very bad time. But if it's for the video, we're gonna have to make some sacrifices. So that means you're gonna play the game 3 times, right? Okay, let's not get ahead of ourselves, alright? One playthrough of this game is more than enough. Alright, with all of that out of the way, let's get started. Mega Man is on a mission to rescue Roll from a rogue Navi named Shade Man. One Legs go later, and the battle initiates. Unable to land hits on Shade Man, Proto Man, being the aura former that he is, comes in with the assist, forcing Shade Man to make a hasty retreat. But during his escape, he dropped something. Lana and Mega Man take it to Higsby and find out that this is a dark chip. Higsby talks about them in a very hyperbolic manner. He makes them sound as this supernatural object, dubbing them as demon chips, but he doesn't give us all of the information. As the story develops, assuming there's even a story in the first place, Mega Man once again has another confrontation with Shade Man. Shade Man wanted Mega Man to return the dark chip, but Mega Man said nuh-uh and destroyed the chip right in front of him. He didn't exactly take that action too kindly, and so another battle begins. Mega Man is still unable to land hits on him, but there's something different this time. After a couple of rounds, you boot up the custom screen, and there you see 2 chips that stand out among the others. You hover on them to see what they are: dark swords. The screen darkens with an ominous, eerie sound that you'd hear in a horror game. There's a sense of foreboding and dread surrounding them, almost like the game is telling you not to use them, but you're in a situation where you have no other choice. Mega Man is forced to tap into this dark power and quickly disposes of Shade Man. Mega Man's exposure to the dark chip was enough to taint him, giving him access to its power. All of a sudden, this turned into a Kingdom Hearts game.
His heart belongs again to darkness.
This is the player's first exposure to the dark chip mechanic, and we get an idea of just how powerful they are. Basically, they are chips that are created using the data of negative emotions, such as anger, fear, anxiety. We'll come back to that later. This is kind of funny to me, because the way that I see it, it's all of that negativity and toxicity you see in forums, social media, or when you're playing a multiplayer game and your teammate tells you to go fuck yourself. All of that is gathered and collected in one area, which later gets translated into a chip format. Just saying, they would have an infinite supply just from Twitter alone. Chad, Proto Man's operator, gives us more details on them, telling us they are created by the crime syndicate Nebula, or more specifically Dr. Regal, we don't need to talk about him, who used these illegal chips to cause a multitude of crimes. He also explains the effects of using a dark chip, stating they destroy the body as they control the mind. As we'll find out later, you'd find this statement to hold quite a lot of truth to it. The Dark Chips themselves aren't an active story beat in Battle Network 4, making them very forgettable, which makes you question why they are here in the first place. It feels like they were added just to have variety in the combat portion of the game, but otherwise they don't serve any grand purpose in the story. Thankfully, this is something Battle Network 5 rectifies. I'll elaborate more on that later. You know, it's been implied that Navis have souls or have some kind of sentience that isn't just tied to their normal programming. You can kind of see them expressing emotions or some level of concern for other beings. Not to mention you have Megaman resonating with souls from other Navis. See, it's right there. The negative data carried by those chips effectively corrupts the Navi that uses them, changing their entire personality to be more cold and ruthless, apathetic to anyone that stands in their way. Power always comes at a price, and in this case, the price is the soul of a Navi. They become addicted to the power of these chips, eliminating any rational thought, just to indulge in their cravings for power. In a way, you can interpret this as an analogy for drug addiction. Just as how drugs can rewire our brain chemistry to crave that dopamine hit, dark chips alter the Navi's programming, making them more dependent on those chips, while slowly destroying their own bodies in the process. I don't think they were trying to tell a story about drug addiction or anything like that, but their similarities were too on the nose to not point it out. Now, there is a specific group of Navis who rely solely on the power of the dark chips, and they are known as the Darkloids. There isn't much information on them, but from all the digging I did across forums and wikis, I gathered that some Darkloids are Navis born from darkness, and others are Navis that fell into the dark power. Personality-wise, they check every box for ruthless and apathetic, but unlike normal Navis, they don't deteriorate when utilizing the dark power. If anything, for them, it's the opposite. They're capable of regenerating and even coming back from deletion. Maybe it's because they're specifically programmed to handle that negative data, or maybe their souls are already too far gone. It's not clearly explained, but it does feel like there's a disconnection between what we are told about the dark chips and what we see in the game. In the anime, they do a much better job portraying the effects of the dark chips. The Darkloids there tend to lose pieces of their data every time they use them. Even so, the power boost they get is undeniable, being able to easily overpower Megaman most of the time. And as they keep using these chips, they become more and more reliant to the point they lose themselves. Granted, the Darkloids here are completely unaware of the side effects, so in their case, they are mostly manipulated into consuming them. I just want to say that while the Battle Network games have interesting stories, they don't delve too deep in its themes. They do explore themes like the dangers of technology and touch on some mature topics here and there, but ultimately they don't take themselves too seriously. There's already a game for that. It's called Megaman Star Force. I say this because the Dark Chip storyline doesn't really touch on its own topics in a nuanced way. It's mostly used as a vehicle to stir the conflict, offering a shallow interpretation of good versus evil. Nebula just wants to turn Navis and humankind evil for the sake of it. At least the conflicts that happened in the first 3 games had a purpose behind them, but I digress. Alright, that's enough for the narrative side. Let's move over to the gameplay side of things. The way dark chips work in both Battle Network 4 and 5 is slightly different. For now, let's focus on Battle Network 4. For you to use them in Battle Network 4, Mega Man needs to get hit repeatedly without fighting back to trigger the anxious state. Oh, look at that. A negative emotion. When this emotion status is activated, Double Soul becomes unavailable to use. However, 2 dark chips will start to pop up on the custom screen. You cannot use them in tandem with regular chips, and you have a maximum of 10 dark chips to use in each battle. Now, what exactly happens when you use a dark chip? For starters, when the battle phase begins, a bug will start to affect Mega Man. Keep in mind this happens before you even use the chip, and multiple bugs can take effect simultaneously. It feels like the game is giving you a last warning before you pull the trigger, but I also think it can be interpreted as showing how strong the negative effects these chips have. Just having them in the loadout is enough to cause problems in Mega Man's system. The bugs will make battles trickier, it might even make them uncomfortable, especially if you don't know which effects they carry. Each dark chip inflicts a specific bug, so if you understand which chip causes what, you can plan ahead to counter them. A couple of examples are Dark Swords will forcefully move you forward, Dark Vulcan will give you confused status, so it reverses your movement, and this one is my personal favorite for how ludicrous it is, Dark Recover will rapidly drain your HP both in battle and in the custom screen. Yep. Oh, well, if it's just bugs, then it doesn't sound so bad. What is that? This is the evil emotion. When this emotion is active, Mega Man loses the ability to use Double Soul or any of his other emotions for the rest of the battle. In addition, the dark chips will always pop up on the custom screen. Okay, so we got bugs, we lose access to the Double Soul in full synchro. Surely those are the only negative traits of using a dark chip, right? Right? Why did I lose 1 HP? What Chad was saying earlier was pretty literal. Every time a dark chip is used, it detracts 1 HP for good. There is no way for you to get it back. The only way is to reload the save before you use a dark chip and never use them again.
Yeah, it's rewind time.
You can lose up to a maximum of 499 HP. That's a pretty heavy toll to pay just to use dark chips. The way this system was designed in Battle Network 4 can feel strange at a first glance. For you to even have access to these chips, you'd have to be really bad at the game or just purposely trigger the anxious state. This presents a mechanical conflict for the player, as they now have to consider the advantages and disadvantages of their choices and figure out what they think is the best choice for their current situation. The scenario goes like this. You're not having a swell time against an enemy, so the game detects that you're struggling in battle, resulting in the dark chips appearing. Do they use the dark chips to easily defeat their enemies and suffer the long-term consequences, or do they want to keep playing the honest way, but risk losing the battle? With the amount of damage they can do, you can pretty easily trivialize early to mid-game fights. The same cannot be said for the end-game side of things. At that point, it becomes more difficult to trivialize fights with just dark chips. So the experience of fighting bosses will be relatively similar to how it would normally be when using regular chips. This adds a new layer of difficulty for experienced players who purposely seek out the dark chips. If we were to take the perspective of a new player, it's possible the player may get a sense of curiosity and try to dabble with the dark chips. After all, they're only given the basic information of what the side effects entail, but they don't know the full extent of those side effects nor the advantages they can bring, leaving some room for the player to experiment with them. So when they see the capabilities in battle, it brings up a whole new question for the player. They're strong, but do I want to rely on them? The permanent HP reduction alone might be a price too steep for most players, and why wouldn't it? The permanent loss is going to weigh more than the gain they receive, and that is also known as loss aversion. It's a psychological concept that describes how someone prefers to avoid losses rather than pursue the advantages you gain from it. If we were to take a look at the game with all of the information, you don't lose anything from just playing the game normally. The Double Souls give you so many tools to play with, and while it does take a while to get them all, losing that just to use dark chips doesn't seem like a good trade-off. That also seems to be the general consensus in the community, with a lot of players expressing how the dark chips just aren't worth it. Regardless, there are some players out there who are perfectly willing to use that power if need be. If the player ends up using dark chips as a crutch for early game, they might end up being a worse player in the long run, because they're not really taking their time to learn the game the way it wants them to. They don't have to rely much on normal folders, and they're likely to not learn enemy patterns since Mega Man is going to be decimating them before they even have the chance to fight back. And with the handicaps being a constant detriment, late game becomes a more unforgiving experience as a result. The fight with Duo is what I think emblematic of that unforgiving experience. Hey, we all know Duo is out here taking bodies. You know it, I know it, your dog knows it, everyone knows it. Before you initiate that fight, Mega Man has to fight his Dark Soul. Side note, it is a pretty cool fight. Dark Mega has the same HP and Navicus programs as you do, and the AI uses chips that you've used throughout the course of the game. After Mega Man prevails, his fight with Duo begins. However, something is not right here. I'll give you guys 3 seconds to figure it out. Time's up. If you guys said that this boss is a legitimate method for torture, you'd be right. However, that's not the answer I was looking for. We're in the evil emotion state, but we got no dark chips.
Yeah, we are absolutely cooked, chat. GG.
The constant use of dark chips finally comes back to bite you. The fight restricts you from the one good thing you get from the evil state, and now you're stuck fighting one of the hardest, if not the most infuriating fight in the Battle Network series. I will say, they did manage to tie the barely existent theme of this game into its combat mechanics. Throughout the game, some characters mention Mega Man's struggle with his inner darkness, how it's trying to pull him in, and we can see that when he's at his weakest. The dark chips appear exactly in those moments. moments, when you're desperate, when you're losing. It's designed in a way that tries to tempt the player to use them. You're out here fighting in all of these competitions when the only battle that matters is with yourself. I think this is the perfect time to start talking about the karma system. Battle Network 4 and 5 have a point system that is used to track Mega Man's alignment. Depending on the amount of karma points, Mega Man can be in 4 states. He could be in his base form. That's not the one I was talking about. There we go. He could be good, slightly evil, and evil. You start out with 500 karma points. By using dart chips, you lose points, tilting the alignment more towards the evil side, turning Mega Man slightly evil. In this state, not much changes. Mega Man can still use Double Soul and his other regular abilities. The only change here is Mega Man turning holy panels into normal panels whenever he steps on them. You can gain karma points by just not using dart chips, like, at all. You can also gain points by running away from battles. These are just ways to tilt Mega Man back to his neutral state, and as long as you keep doing so, you will eventually reach the good state, which requires you to have the maximum amount of points. If you keep using dark chips, eventually he'll turn into the evil state, and it's here where things start to change drastically. Every time you start a battle, now you start it with the evil emotion, giving you instant access to dark chips. You can also say goodbye to good alignment chips, meaning no Navi chips, no SP chips, no Gundo Soul chips, and many others, which honestly is a really big loss, but it's not all hopeless. You can still gain karma points to return Mega Man his regular abilities. However, this will only work if you haven't reached the point of no return. If you commit to using dark chips, you might reach a certain threshold that can cause Mega Man to permanently stay in his evil state. No matter what you do, no matter how many times you finish a battle without using dark chips, Mega Man will remain evil. Actually, that's not entirely true. There is a Navi Cust program that lets you cleanse Mega Man called Soul Clean, but there's a small catch. Just a little teensy thing about it. You can only get it during post-game, so it's all or nothing if you want to go evil. If you somehow went too far with the dark chips and suddenly decide that you want to change back, then yeah. You're better off just dropping the game entirely at that point. Regardless, if anyone fully commits to playing as Evil Mega Man, it opens up an entirely different playstyle that is separate from what we've seen in previous entries. Despite the fact that dark chips bring an entire bible of side effects, they do offer some perks aside from just landing big damage. One of the perks is being able to utilize specific chips, and unlike dark chips, you can actually put these in your folder, and they are known as evil chips. You got chips like Anubis, Black Wing, Static, which is insanely broken, it's actually ridiculous, among others. Truthfully, there's not many exclusive chips, but the option is there for those who are genuinely crazy enough to try it. In addition, you can use dark versions of Navi chips, which you can get by beating the Dark Soul versions of the bosses in Black Earth area, or you can get them by beating the Omega versions as Evil Mega Man. Although I wouldn't recommend going for that option because then it becomes a hassle trying to get the SP versions. Relative to the SP versions, the DS chips are inconsistent with their damage. Why? Because fuck them, that's why. For you to maximize damage, you need to set up dark holes on the field, and you only get 2 dark chips per draw, so you're going to need the blessing of the RNG gods if you really want to play optimally. In a way, Dark Mega Man is kind of like Bug style from BN3, except the bugs you get here are mostly negative. Actually, no, they're all negative. But the attack power is supposed to make up for those downsides. Emphasis on supposed to. When comparing both regular and Dark Mega Man, regular Mega Man has a bit of a slow start since you aren't giving very high damaging chips during the first couple of hours. But you have a wider arsenal of tools accessible to you as the game opens up. There's a bigger reward for skillful players who can take advantage of full synchro, while Double Soul also brings more versatility than anything Dark Mega Man can provide. Yeah, this is not close. This is like a coughing baby versus a hydrogen bomb type shit. Regular Mega Man is the optimal pick. There's no ifs, ands, or buts about it. But we're not here to compare which one is better. We are here to determine the viability. So let's not discard Dark Mega just yet, because he does have some cool stuff going for him. He has a more high risk, high reward type of gameplay style, and you get easier access to higher damaging burst attacks, but he is far more volatile. You know, pretty much the stuff that we already covered. But there's one thing he has that good Mega Man doesn't. A Dark Soul. Despite having soul in the name, it doesn't remotely work like Double Soul in the slightest. Dark Soul is a berserk-like state that activates when you take a fatal hit while you're in the evil emotion. You lose control of Megaman, but will remain invincible with the AI randomly using attacks you've used throughout your playthrough. You can actually train the Dark Soul to reliably use program advances and other strong chips. Speaking of program advances, Dark Megaman actually has an exclusive program advance. Combining the chip's Dark Line Star Code, Buck Chain Star Code, and Base or Base Anli, you get the Dark Neo program advance, or the full name being Dark Messiah Neo. Wait, that's a cool name for an attack. What the hell? I'm gonna let the footage speak for itself. You know what? Maybe doing an evil Mega Man run doesn't sound so bad after all. One thing I love is when the themes of the story are reflected in the gameplay itself. The story of these games emphasize the importance of friendships. Yeah, it is pretty cheesy, but you know, it makes sense. It is a game targeted primarily for kids, but I really like how you can see elements of those themes reflected in the gameplay as well. Sure, with the dark chips you have an easier time dealing with weaker enemies, but ultimately Mega Man is never going to reach his full potential that way. It is a long road to reach that peak, but once you do, it opens up so many possibilities to play the game. The dark chips severely limit Mega Man, removing core aspects of his identity and thus his strongest abilities. It's Mega Man's bond with land that leads him to fully synchronize with it. It's the way he empathizes and bonds with other Navis that give him strength to activate Double Soul. Giving into that dark power means you are severing those connections. Even when you're facing Dark Mega Man as a boss, he feels significantly weaker and more limited than what our Mega Man is truly capable of. Look at this bump. Well, you can't Double Soul, bitch? Whether they purposely made the side effects too extreme or not, it's safe to say that the game attempts to make you feel somewhat stressed, for my lack of a better term, through the use of its mechanics. Personally, when I was doing this run, I kind of felt revolted for using them in the first place. Sure, I was winning battles easily, but at what cost? It didn't feel like I earned those wins. I wasn't engaging with other mechanics anymore. All of my victories just felt hollow. In Battle Network 4, we were never fully shown what happens to Navis who are completely consumed by dark chips. Aside from that moment when Chad uses one on Proto Man, which is mostly glossed over, it doesn't really expand on that conflict, nor it tries to go in full detail of the lingering effects it could have had on Proto Man. We help Proto Man and then BAM! We battle him. It's like nothing ever happened. Instead, the game contextualizes that corruption process in another way, and that's through gameplay. We get to see Mega Man turn evil. Well, it doesn't really turn evil, it's just an effect that happens in-game, but we can assume that this is what happens to other Navis that use dark chips. Not only do we get to see it, we get to experience it. It's one of the aspects of Battle Network 4 that I like. The way they implemented this feels thematically consistent with the little portions of the story. But then Battle Network 5 happened. Dark chips in Battle Network 5 are obtained through external factors. They operate more like the regular chips and can be added a maximum of 3 dark chips to the folder. We actually get to see Nebula using these things. There's a whole map where we see them mass producing them, and they pretty much supply them to other low-key individuals. There's like a whole black market surrounding these things. You have shady NPCs trying to sell them to you. It's crazy. Kids in these streets out here giving out AI drugs. Kid, don't go down this path, it's not worth it. Nebula also supplies them directly to their own Darkloids. There comes a point in Battle Network 5 where Mega Man gets kidnapped and gets implanted with a dark chip, consequently turning him into Dark Mega Man. Just with that alone, it does a much better job at cementing the threat that dark chips impose. Later on, we get to see Mega Man finally prevailing over his Dark Soul, and with it, the ability to control the dark power. You know, even when you're fighting for everlasting peace, sometimes you need a little chaos in your life to spice things up. Combining your alignment to the light with the power of the dark chips creates chaos unison, and yep, they completely remove any valid reason to go dark in this game. I mean, the dark chips were kind of nerfed already since you could only use 3 per battle, but with this inclusion it kind of defeats the purpose of wanting to do an evil playthrough. You're less incentivized to use dark chips in its pure form because why would you? Well, I guess the evil chips are still a thing, but overall, if you're someone who only wanted to use dark chips, you don't really need to force yourself to go the evil route. But going back to the topic of Chaos Unison, the mechanic works more like Double Soul. The big difference here is that you can only use this form for 1 turn. Alright, time to charge and spam my buster shots and delete these viruses. Why are you everywhere I go? Come on, we all know when dark chips are involved, it ain't gonna be simple. When you charge your weapon, 2 lights will start to show up and will be switching back and forth. For you to use your attack, you have to let go of the charge when the purple color shines on Megaman. If you mistime it, well, you've already seen what happens. You lose your Chaos Unison and your Dark Soul takes shape, basically becoming a hazard in battle. He has the same characteristics as your Berserk state. He is invincible, he'll use attacks you've been using, all that jazz. Thankfully, he's only active for a limited amount of time, but even so, he is a menace and he will make fights really uncomfortable during that time period. It's interesting how Dark Chips, while usable with good Mega Man, still retain that high-risk, high-reward gameplay style. The developers very likely knew that these chips were insanely strong without the typical side effects, so they felt they needed to find a way to keep players from abusing them. If I'm being honest, it seems like this shatters some of the thematic elements established in the gameplay of Battle Network 4. It was the way the game would tell you, hey, we see you struggling in this battle here, have a little something to help you out, in a way that it felt like you were signing a contract with the devil. I swear this is not an in defense of Battle Network 4 video, I swear to God. Now, it could have been the developers course correcting and recognizing that accessing this power was very counterintuitive, so they made them more accessible in the sequel. But they lose that essence, that feeling of pressure you could get whenever they showed up at those moments of urgency. Sure, now you have the choice to add them to your folder, but they don't carry that sinister feeling anymore. But it makes sense when you think of it as an evolution of what BN4 established. While Battle Network 4 was all about struggling with your inner demons, Battle Network 5 is about overcoming it. The Chaos Unison being representative of Mega Man's power over his own Dark Soul. He's willing to use this power to fight for the right reasons, and yet still have the strength to not let it corrupt him. He uses the bonds with his friends to tether him to the light and letting him keep his control. Even during the transformation sequence, you can see how the Double Soul is sort of shielding him from his Dark Soul, from its corruption. The color of the armor having a darker tone is also a nice little detail to reflect that. It's honestly one of my favorite mechanics of this game. It just adds that depth to the combat with the charge shots, and it has just the right risk versus reward to keep you engaged. Sadly, these Dark Chips don't present a compelling moral dilemma to the player. For all of the game's intent to make you avoid Dark Chips, nobody seems to react to your usage of them. No, this was not a clean fight. I literally just cheated, bro. The game still goes on with the assumption that you haven't used them. There's a term for this, but I can't seem to recall. Ludonarrative dissonance! Yes, we're saying the big gamer word, yes! And listen, I don't think every game has to have the story and gameplay agreeing with each other. It varies on the type of game and what it's trying to achieve. But so long as both aspects are well constructed in isolation, it's not too big of a deal. But I also think if the choices presented are closely tied to the main themes of the game, they should show some level of consequence. The player's choice would have more weight if we could see events reacting to those choices. Maybe that's why the side effects are so punishing. Maybe it was done as a way to make up for its lack of impact in the story. I understand the developers were pretty much working on Capcom's tight deadlines, but it would have been cool to see the karma system have an influence in the narrative in some way. Maybe having some scenes play out in a different way, like if you use Dark Chips during a tournament match, maybe a character comments on it or something, I don't know. Just having some sort of narrative consequence would have been cool to see. They could have at least changed Mega Man's overworld sprite to represent your alignment. I mean, they've proven they were capable of doing something like this. In the post-game, after you beat the Mirror of Truth, there is this spiritual entity that looks a lot like Hub. And if you're in the evil state, not only will it not give you Hub badge, but it looks at you with a sad expression. Maybe there was just no interest in doing anything like that, and maybe it was for the best, because I don't know how they can justifiably explain how Lan would even consider using multiple Dark Chips on his brother. Well, he said that one time with Shademan, but let's forget that ever happened. While I think the concept of Dark Chips is still cool, it didn't really live up to its full potential. They managed to fit its themes well in combat, but they didn't leave as big of a mark as they could have in the grand scheme of the story. I would have loved to see the Dark Chips used more like the noise cards from Star Force 3, maybe having Nebula agents scattered around the net and forcefully injecting Dark Chips into other navies, leading them to cause chaos around the net, or maybe having the tournaments be the setting where we see other operators utilize Dark Chips. It could have led to a more interesting plot than what we had, as well as adding more emotional weight to the player if they ended up using Dark Chips. Also, the way they were introduced leaned more into the supernatural side of things. Like I said earlier, I do like how they are used in a thematic sense, but when you take into account how chips normally work, it just doesn't really follow the rules that we've come to know. You're telling me that from being exposed to one Dark Chip, all of a sudden now you have a hidden arsenal of them pop up? Like, what? Battle Network 5 kind of rectified it, making them work more like normal chips, while also adding a bit of world building. It seemed like they had a better idea on how to implement them. But with the ending of Battle Network 5, the production of dark chips would inevitably stop, meaning they don't return in Battle Network 6. With all that said, I'm glad the dark chips were added to the series. They were a memorable part of my experience in these games, and I've come to appreciate them despite their flaws. And they brought an alternate way to experience the games. Games that already have a lot of depth as is. And that marks the end of the video. Thank you guys so much for watching. I made a post about it, but I still wanted to just say thank you guys for the support and helping me reach 1,000 subscribers, almost 2,000, which is crazy. I'm gonna be honest, I didn't think I'd get this far. I did not expect that video to blow up the way that it did, and I did not expect that video to blow up the way that it did, and seeing some of the comments talking about their experience with the Battle Network games was great, man. It makes me feel glad that people resonated with the video enough to share those memories and experiences. These games were a big part of my life. They still are, so I'm gonna keep yapping about them every chance I get, alright? I pray that Capcom makes a Star Force 4 or just a successor, or just another game in general. Just come on, Capcom, please. We're starving. But yeah, that's about it. Let me know what you guys think of the dark chips or the video in the comments. Leave a like and subscribe as well. Helps the channel out. And with that, I'll see y'all on the next one. Drink lots of water. Peace out.